We are officially on the air for the second episode of Battling Basic. Today, we got a special guest on today. We got Carly Vandergrient. Is that how you say your last name?
Yep.
Okay, Carly, how's it going?
Pretty great. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for being on today. For those listening, Carly is the head athletic therapist of McMaster University. She's been my athletic therapist for the past year or so, and I've been pretty happy with the work she's been doing. And over the course of many treatments, we've had a couple of chats, and I've come to know her very well, and I've come to know that she's got a pretty interesting story. So we're going to hear all about it today. So Carly, to start off, can you just kind of tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into athletic therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Ottawa. Grew up playing every sport that I could possibly, mostly soccer and volleyball. And through those sports, I guess, sustained injuries and required a couple shoulder surgeries. And in Ottawa, I was hoping to come play volleyball here, there, or wherever would have me. And I was kind of linked up with a really awesome athletic therapist who predominantly worked hockey and things like that. So working with volleyball players was pretty new to him.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a really great kind of attitude and outlook on rehab and stuff, so that always kind of stuck with me. And I was always strong in kind of sciences and math and have a good photographic memory, so anatomy and things like that came easy to me.
Yeah.
Or at least remembering them.
You have photographic memory, or just like you remember stuff well?
I have a photographic memory in the sense
Seriously?
that if I like highlight things in particular colors,
Yeah.
when I'm in an exam and I'm like, oh God, where was that? If I can picture where it was on the page, or like what
Okay.
color that was written in, I can picture the page. You know what I mean? Like I can
Yeah. Like
draw.
if it was like upper left-hand side of the screen or like the paper
and
or
I
something.
remember it was highlighted in pink. I can see it.
Jeez.
So it helped when you're like kind of studying major lists and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, so had surgery, had to go through rehab. The surgery didn't go awesome. The rehab, although executed well, didn't end up going awesome, had some ongoing issues. So I came to MAC in 2003 for kin, but also to play volleyball, and volleyball wasn't going so hot. I wasn't doing as well as I thought, and I was getting kind of frustrated, and having been kind of a contributing member to teams I had been on, and now, you know, like back of the bench and shoulder wasn't doing great, I decided to kind of focus my energy on being a like a student therapist here at MAC. And I thought maybe it would be temporary until my shoulder got strong and then go back to playing volleyball, and it never really did. So I ended up falling just as much in love with that as I did the sport, it seemed. So
Yeah.
kind of got my start in sports medicine intro here at MAC in kin. Worked with tons of different teams: baseball, wrestling, football, rugby. So yeah, and then after graduation, I moved back home, had no idea what I was going to do. And the sports med clinic here called me, and they're like, we need someone to do hydrotherapy and bracing and things like that. Do you want to move back? So it was kind of a good interim to jump off from where I wanted to go. And when I was here, I realized, shit, there's a lot more I need to learn, and opted to go into athletic therapy at Sheridan.
Okay.
And so yeah, through Sheridan, there's tons of awesome internship sports programs that you can go and work with, and one of them was the Ticats. So in my summer of my second year, I did an internship with the Hamilton Ticats of the CFL. And I guess that went well, and Chris Puskas, who's one of the head athletic therapists here, he was like, let's stay on. And then in the next 2 summers and new seasons, I kept going with that. And after graduation, he opted to come here, which was like crushing for me, because I was like, I've worked for 3 years for free in the CFL, hoping to get a job, and my connection just left. And so he came here to MAC to work, and thankfully he had, you know, said good things and suggested me to be the assistant for the incoming head therapist. So had a job, my first, you know, big girl job out of school, and I was the assistant, and just right place at the right time. The guy who got hired as the head therapist wasn't able to, you know, decided that it wasn't the right fit for him, and he quit on the first day of training camp. So
No, first day?
first day. And at the time, it was a very like vet-heavy team, so I guess management talked to them and said, so do you want us to go find someone else? And they're like, well, right now, can we just have what we know and we'll go from there, see if it works. So they hired me as an interim basis, kind of days after my 26th birthday and a handful of days before my national certification exam. And it was on an interim basis, but then fast forward 6 years later, I was still the head therapist, so something worked out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Right, yeah. I mean, if you don't present yourself with those, sacrificing for 3 years, grinding for free, it ends up paying off, right? So it's easy to tell students now, like, yeah, I hear you, you're stressed with school, you're busy, but this is how you have to do it if you want opportunity, right? Because I've been in all of their shoes, so.
No, that's tough, like, doing it for free, like, finding a way to support yourself outside of that, because when you want to pursue any passion, it's just like you're not going to get compensated right off the bat. Right. You're going to have to grind it out for a while.
And I think there's always going to be someone who's willing to do it for free. So if you aren't, if you're like, no, I think I deserve this or I deserve that. I'm not saying that I want people to always think that it's okay to work for free, but sometimes I think if an opportunity is valuable enough, you make it work.
Yeah.
So you work on the side or, in the off season or whatever, you make it. Those times count more, but I don't know.
Do you think like a lot of people like have something that they want to do and then because there's no compensation, like they kind of settle and do something that they don't really want to do, but they get paid for that?
I guess. I think I think maybe there's two types of people, those who kind of know what their passion is and know what they want to do, and I think those people are lucky, and I would consider myself one of those, that I knew I wanted to somehow be helping people and in healthcare. And my brother, he's always been artistic. He knew he wanted to, be an architect or do something like that. He's always been driven. Whereas there's tons of people out there that I think I feel sorry that they just have no idea what they want to do. They're kind of trying to figure it out. And there's people who are actively trying to find it, and then people who are willing to not as actively pursue it. And I think that's tough.
Yeah, that's tough. So like, so there's some people that seek out opportunity and then there's some people that seek out like just kind of security, right? Mm-hmm. And like when you were pursuing it, like what kind of kept you going? Because you have to kind of go in blind and just operate based on faith. There's no
100%.
Right? Like,
yeah, I think if you like something and you think you are able to give someone something, and I felt like I could be good at this, and I felt like I had enough faith, like you said, to trust the process and to see where it went. I didn't think I had anything to lose because I knew that regardless if it didn't work out, that I wasn't in pro sport, that all these experiences would still lead me somewhere. It's still resume building, right? So I think any opportunity, whether it's positive or negative, it's still going to lead you to a learning experience, right? So that's what I tell the students here that work in our sport med program. If you don't like working with team, it's equally as valuable. Okay, I hated working with wrestling. Well, then you don't want to work with wrestling. It's still positive.
Who hates working with wrestling?
No one, but
give me their name right now.
I'm just saying, baseball. I didn't like working with baseball. It was my very first team. I was like, baseball, what the hell? Like, do people even get injured playing baseball? And that year, in fact, they didn't. The injuries were like a dog bite and someone jumping off a table at a party.
A dog bite?
Yes, one of the pitchers got bit in the hand.
So they were all non-athletic related.
Right. However, the girl that I was paired with was awesome, and she like had really good perspective. Like, work hard, but don't let it overtake you. Kind of like, don't put all of your energy. And so I think back to that opportunity. If I hadn't worked with her, would that kind of have brought me a different path? So it was a silly, kind of useless sports medicine experience, but I was really thankful to work with her. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think I've just always been kind of okay to find some good in every situation and have the hope and the faith and the trust that something will come out of it, regardless if it's a job or security. In my field, it's not, job security is not what's driving you, because in pro sport, we are expendable. And kind of the old, like the saying that we always had is, if you don't think you're replaceable, then you're kind of oblivious, because everybody's replaceable. GMs, managers, players, everyone is replaceable.
Yeah.
But you have to try and show that to replace you would be tough.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody is expendable in some fashion, but it's kind of the excitement. It makes you work harder and makes you show that you are worth being there and worth that effort, right?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And like you were young, right? So like you kind of didn't have much to lose at that time, and like
100%. Yeah, I was like, listen, what my apartment, my bedroom of the furniture that I have, I didn't have anybody counting on me, and I have a family that was like, my paychecks were putting food in their mouth, and it was just kind of me that I had to look out for. And I knew that this was looking like, if they fed us,
yeah, you just have to do enough to
I
feed
just wore
yourself.
tie-cat clothes every day, you know what I mean? So I didn't have many expenses because you were legitimately there, 15 plus hours a day.
Yeah.
So that was the time that I was like, I'm willing to put all my eggs in that basket. And if it doesn't work out, no problem. I'm not much worse for wear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Well, like I'm at the age now, like I just recently graduated, and like me and a lot of my friends are just like, oh, like it's kind of tough. Like, what are we gonna do now? And it's just like, it sucks. It really sucks not knowing what's next. But it's at the same time we're so lucky because we can literally do anything we want and not lose anything. Like, yeah, we have student debt. It sucks.
Sure.
But we're at the age where we can literally do anything. We don't have to take, I don't know, like Timmy to soccer practice, and
Sure.
like we just do whatever we want. Like, so it's just like we're pretty lucky in that sense. Like, it's stressful, but we're lucky, right? So.
And I think it's tough. I think it's tough now. I think whether it's more competition now or more expectation, when I was coming out of high school, it was like, okay, if you had the marks, you'd go to university. If you didn't have the marks, you'll go to college. It's still a great opportunity. Now it's like, okay, the expectation is to do something, college, university, whatever. But I did university and then I did 4 years of college. And it's like college is kind of helping refine people's skills into more practical based and internship based stuff. So it's tough because I don't know if now university is even enough for people to like rest their head on. I think the major thing is experiential learning. So whether you're going out and volunteering or you're going out and being a wrestling coach or whatever experiences you want to kind
real
of
world experience.
Check off your list. Okay, do I want to do anything in this field? Well, you kind of have to, or I'm of the belief that you should go and seek an opportunity, shadow someone or volunteer, even if it's not glamorous. Like if we have students that are like, I want to know if I want to be an athletic therapist or a physiotherapist. I said, well, come on in and watch. And yeah, you might do crappy jobs like fold towels and fill ultrasound gel and stuff, but you also may get to see cool injuries and injury assessments and massage techniques and the real life. Like at the end of the day, I'm still filling massage gel and cleaning tables and cleaning out cold tubs. It doesn't ever get to be glamorous, but if you're in it for that, then maybe you should look outside of athletic therapy because it's not super glamorous.
No, nothing is ever as glamorous as it seems to be, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, going on that then, tell me like a bit about the lifestyle of being an athletic therapist and how hectic it can get,
Yeah, I think, I'll totally just speak on my experience because I think the nice thing about athletic therapy is that, for those who don't know, athletic therapy is similar to physiotherapy. Physiotherapy is maybe a term that people are more used to hearing if they're not totally involved in sport. The only difference is that athletic therapy is yet to be a master's program. So it isn't a regulated health profession. So sometimes...
So like that college program you did then, that wasn't a post-grad, that was just like...
So it's essentially a second undergrad.
Wow.
So originally it was a diploma in sports injury management. Then maybe a decade ago, it got an honors Bachelor of Health Sciences in the field of athletic therapy.
Okay.
And I think they'll do that until they can get up to a master's status, which would be
So like your
ideal.
kin degree didn't count towards that? Like that...
It got me credits that allowed me to not have to do my first year of the program.
Okay.
Which was sweet. You didn't have to do all those smaller introductory courses. And so I did essentially the second, third, and fourth year of the program.
Yeah.
And it was similar to kin, it just delved deeper. So upper body was a whole semester, upper body anatomy, whole semester, upper body biomechanics, whole semester, instead of just like full body as a half semester. You know what I mean? So you just went into a much greater depth in certain things. But the specialty, I guess you could say, of an athletic therapist is kind of more prompt, immediate injury assessment when it happens, whether it's because you were on the field, court, mat, whatever, and you saw the injury and you're able to first see it happen, and then the ensuing kind of immediate rehab.
So physio is more after the fact.
I mean, I think there are sport physios who follow sports teams and are there, but most often it's clinical setting. People are coming into them whether 2 days or 3 months post-injury and kind of doing those clinical-based treatments. And as you know, we kind of heavily go through the biomechanics, kind of take me through the exact position you were in. And it could be a traumatic injury or it could be kind of an ongoing injury, and we're trying to solve a puzzle. Why is it happening? Is it because of your technique? Is it because of, you're not strengthening something properly, and trying to really address the athlete as a whole instead of just that one piece. Okay, my knee's sore, but why is your knee sore? Going through that whole, and walking you through the steps right up until return to play.
Yeah.
Right? So doing drill work, whether it's on the mat. Today I have, I go and I take out an hour of my schedule and I go play pepper with one of the volleyball girls who's coming back from ACL. So it's actually, I'm taking her onto the court and we're doing on-court rehab, because it's not just on the table. It's not just that stuff. So I think it's a little bit more involved, and because there maybe isn't as much acknowledgement support in athletic therapy, we try and kind of get people better as fast as possible, right? We may not have all of the time or whatever. So we're trying to get people back as safely but as effectively as possible.
They can compete at nationals at the end of the season or
right.
whatnot. Yeah.
Right. So I think, athletic therapists could be in a clinic, just like a physiotherapist, working side by side, just doing clinical treatments. They could be just on field. They work the on field and they're not given the opportunity to do the rehab component. But in my setting, I'm both on field, court, mat, whatever setting the athletes are, as well as doing the rehab component, which is always kind of what I've wanted to keep. When I left the Ticats to come to Mac, and the decision was, I had done my undergrad at Mac, and I was in the process at the time of doing my master's in rehab sciences at Mac. And I really loved the doctors that were here, the athletes that were here, Chris who was here. And I was thinking, well, this might be a little bit better of work-life balance.
You're aware of the...
Yeah, and I was excited to work with that type of population. It's not money-driven. Yeah, you could be someone like you who's trying to get to that next level and trying to make a career out of this, but it's still driven by kind of pure desire and passion for sport, not just to earn a check.
It's not business-driven.
Right,
yeah.
It's a lot less business-driven. So I think the lifestyle is kind of as you make it. How much time are you committing to this? How many people are relying on you? I don't have people I don't know signing up. Most of my athletes I know pretty well. And
so when you were working with the Ticats, it's kind of like that then?
Well, it was similar to here, where I knew, I had those 75 to 100 guys that I knew that was treating, right? If you're in a clinic, like at the DBAC Center here, you may not know who's coming in to see you. You may not know the history.
Oh, okay.
Whereas on a given day, I pretty much know what's about to happen. I know, I heard last night so-and-so hurt their ankle. I know the next day I'm going to be evaluating it and seeing how we can get that person back to play. So I think the lifestyle it can be a grind. If you're working with athletes commit a lot of time. And if an athlete's going to respect you, you're going to contribute an equal amount of time, so that there's that reciprocal kind of respect for, you're working hard, I'm working hard, this person's going to help me achieve my goals.
Yeah.
Right? So, you're putting in a lot of hours. You're expected to have a really broad knowledge of sport. Here I work with 7 different sports, so have a relative understanding. As you know, sometimes I'm like, I don't understand what a high crotch shot is, whatever the hell they're called. You know what I mean?
No one understands wrestling. It's tough.
But I know enough to say, walk me through the stuff that's causing you challenges or pain or whatever.
So it's applicable to all environments.
You just have to kind of know what is going to be expected of the athlete you're working with. Good understanding of strength and conditioning, nutrition, sleep, rest, recovery, as well as rehab techniques, bracing, taping, stretching, all that stuff kind of falls into the spectrum. And A day here is maybe, I would say my normal clinic hours are 10 to 6, but tonight's Friday, volleyball home openers. I'll be here till 10, 11 at night. So on
Jeez.
game days, my expectation here is to be here for home games. And then, as you know, if our teams travel internationally, I've had the opportunity to go to Taiwan and Poland this year, which was
That's
really awesome.
Yeah. You just got back from Poland, right?
Just
Yeah.
got back from Poland last week, yeah, so I'm finally not jet lagged, which is great.
She was a little bit late today, guys, so
Yeah,
she is
10
still a little bit
whole
jet
minutes
lagged.
late. So yeah, the lifestyle is kind of as you make it, right? It's going to depend on your commitment, but what I've tried to do being here the last almost 2 years is recognize that I need to focus on myself a little bit too. So if my last patient's at 5:30 and no one's come in with an injury and everything's wrapped up, well then friggin' go home at 6 o'clock. Don't
Yeah.
linger around till 8 because you feel worried that someone's going to get hurt, right? Is trying to separate and have a little bit better work-life balance, because I think, or I hope, that will help keep a longer career if you can have that separation. Whereas with Ticats, I always felt like my phone was right beside me, that in the middle of the night my phone could ring, and I was kind of always on edge like that, because that was
Yeah.
what was expected of me. Here, everyone here kind of respects that you have a life outside of work,
Yeah.
right? And of course, if someone were to text me at 1 a.m, hey, I got hurt, I'm at the hospital, I wouldn't not respond by any means. But it's not that expectation to constantly be available, which is nice.
That's stressful, just like constantly having your phone with you and
Yeah.
like worrying, and like I kind of like I respect the fact that you have that work-life balance, because if you're like in a moment that nothing is expected of you, you're still like focusing on it, it'll probably like burn you out for the long run,
For
right?
sure.
And so like the way you approach it right now, you're setting yourself up to be vigilant for the moments that actually matter.
Right.
So like in a national like final or whatever it is, like a big competition, CIS, whatever, you'll be more vigilant in those situations because you took care of yourself in the earlier situations.
100%. And it kind of allows you to be less resentful. Like, and it's not something that happens voluntarily. It's just like something that kind of builds on you, that at the end of my
Innately.
time, like I'm an overall pretty positive person. I like to help people. I'm very much wanting to help people, but you could see I could feel myself being a little bit less, hey, tell me your problems. Hey, yeah, of course we can do treatment. I was getting a little bit more shorter fuse and being like, why aren't people doing what they need to do? Like, why are you expecting me to do massage? Have you done your rolling, your stretching? You know me.
Yeah.
My expectation now is that athletes put in the same amount of work. I don't want to be the sole provider of recovery. My expectation now is if you are putting in the work for yourself, 1,000% I'm open and willing to help you.
It's a two-way street.
It's a two-way street. But, yeah, I think I got to the point where I was like, man, I feel like I'm carrying the burden. And I didn't feel that was good for me personally, because I didn't want to resent anyone. I didn't want to think
Yeah.
negatively of anyone. I like
So
to
like
try
an
to think the
athlete
best.
doesn't take care of themselves, and then they'll kind of like get really tight one day and they'll come in and be like, I need a massage.
Right, because it's subjective, right? I can try as hard or as not hard as I want.
Yeah.
If I want to help you, if I'm like, okay, Ahmed, I see your work ethic. I know that you do all the right things. Overall, I'm going to put a lot of positive energy into you, and I'm going to really sit down with you when we've sat down before. Okay, what are you doing? What are you not doing? How can we get you better?
Yeah.
If you don't think someone's putting in the work, am I going to want to contribute the same amount of effort? Probably not, even though I'm trying.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, you're like, well, if that person's not putting in the effort, why should I? Right? So
Fair
that's
enough.
here. It's an education process. Some of these athletes haven't had someone that's in their corner and cheering for them and like wanting them to be their best. So if an athlete's constantly getting hurt, I try and, okay, let's sit down one-on-one, write down, keep a journal of what you're eating, what you're drinking, how much you're sleeping, when you're working out, when do you feel crappy, when do you feel really good, and try and kind of solve the puzzle, which I think is almost more important than doing the massage and the stretching and all those things, is just like going down deeper and figuring out routine-based stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not just treatment, and it's not just taping, and it's I think it's providing someone kind of sounding board to figure themselves out too.
Yeah. No, there's so much more to it. I didn't even realize. Like I just always assumed that I had to do those things. I didn't realize there's like athletes that just just come in for treatment and whatnot. But
Yeah, I mean,
that's
and I think when you get to a certain level, when you're good enough at sport, sometimes you can just get by,
yeah.
right? Those people that are amazing natural athletes,
Hmm.
is it because they've worked really, really hard? Is it because it just came naturally to them? Well, at a certain point, talent only gets you so far,
Yeah,
right? So those people who are willing to work hard and have talent are going to be the ones that prevail.
for sure.
So if someone asks for my advice and help and stuff, then I want to be able to give it to them. And even for those who don't ask it, you've had treatment by me. I don't normally shut up during treatment because I'm like, have you been drinking water? Have you been foam rolling? Have you been stretching? And just trying to allow a treatment appointment to be kind of education based as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've learned a lot from your from the therapy sessions
My
that I had with you. Yeah. So, anyways, so I know that you were actually, when you got the position with the Ticats, you were one of the first female athletic therapists in pro sports in North America. Talk to me a little bit about that and kind of like how, because you're a female athletic therapist, the head one, and you were in a predominantly male environment. Like, talk to me how that was, and like, kind of like, was it difficult getting people to like abide by your rules and stuff and whatnot? So like,
I think while there are definitely very, very few, and I don't even know, I haven't done I used to go into Sheridan and give kind of like a speech or like a little chat on females in pro sport, and I haven't done that in a few years, so I haven't like done all of my research. But if I'm up to date, there are currently no female athletic therapists in major North American sport currently to date.
seriously.
Now, there was Erin Brooks, who I think now works at George Brown and U of T. She was the head athletic therapist for the Argos for a bunch of years prior to me. So I certainly wasn't the first, but I was one of a very small few. There was a woman who was the assistant athletic therapist with the Steelers for a good handful of years. But at the time in 2011, when I got the job, I was the only female athletic therapist for a major pro team. And yeah, I think people overthink it, why there aren't more women. I think it's just coaches and management think that it's maybe easier to hire a man, to blend in with the team and command a team because it takes a lot of respect. But if I think of like the skill set of a woman, and to be nurturing is important, it's not critical, but also multitasking, like you're doing administrative tasks, you're doing injury management, you're communicating with coaches, you're facilitating rehab, you're helping with the strength coach. It takes a lot of multitasking. And not that women are better at multitasking, but some may say they
No,
could
they're
be.
definitely better at being organized for sure. Like,
But you don't do treatment in the locker room. So what does it matter if it's a man or a woman doing treatment? Like, yeah, if someone were to get like pass out in the locker room, I would go in there and I wouldn't think anything of it, right? But no, I don't need to be in the locker room. I don't need to be that. So why can't it be a woman? And I think I was really lucky at the time because we had a GM and a coach that was open-minded enough to say, yeah, we know you've been around as a student and you've worked hard and you put in your time and we've never had issues, and you come across just as someone who's wanting to do the job well.
yeah,
You don't want someone to just look at you and say, okay, you're a female athletic therapist. You just want to be an athletic therapist doing your job.
yeah,
I think the only challenges about being a female athletic therapist is that, like I said before, there's so much time that goes into it that where a man doing the same role could have a wife at home who's maybe, going to have kids and stuff like that. For myself, it was, if I were to want to have kids, I would have to sacrifice that time in the career. So sometimes that may be the trick, is that you put yourself a little bit on the back burner and you focus on this. But like we talked about, I was young enough that I was like, okay, I'm okay putting myself second to attempting this career and things like that. But luckily in the CFL, there's Canadians and Americans, and in a lot of the Div 1 and Div 2 schools, it's becoming a lot more common that there's female athletic therapists, female doctors. So a lot of these Americans who you would think to be more shocked to have a female athletic therapist were open to it. And, in 9 years being there, there's a small handful of times that I felt either disrespected or that I had to literally prove myself. I think everybody has to prove themselves, and I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to have to prove myself as a female. I wanted to prove myself as a young, up-and-coming athletic therapist.
Yeah, just as an athletic therapist.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. And I think being younger was probably a bigger hurdle than being a female.
Mm-hmm.
I had coaches. In my first 3 years with the Ticats, there was a new head coach every year of the first 3 years of being a head therapist. So I had to kind of re-interview and re-prove myself, if you want. And it was my age, not my sex, that was harder to overcome.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so
Like
young.
the experience level. And,
Right.
Yeah.
How could you possibly be able to contribute here? And, it was kind of trying to convey the passion. And if I didn't know, I was going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I wasn't just going to say, oh, yeah, I was going to fake it. I said if I didn't know the answer that I needed to know, I was going to go ask Dr. Levy, or I was going to go look it up. And I think they trusted that I would never let something pass me by without figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why there's not more females. Because let me tell you, in school, there's, kin is
Full of females.
heavy females.
Yeah.
Athletic therapy, there was 4 guys in my graduating class. It was so many more women.
No way.
Yeah, of 26 or 27, there was 4 or 5 guys.
That's
that
weird,
graduated.
yeah. No, but I'm really glad that you brought that up. You wanted to be challenged as an athletic therapist, just as an athletic therapist,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's a lot of people out there that tend to think that everything should be handed to them. And then when something is not, they tend to blame it on other things. Like if you're a minority, is it because I'm this? Or if you're an opposite sex, or if you're, your sexual orientation. It's just don't get me wrong, there are situations where that occurs, hands down, and that sucks for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think now it's getting to the point where people just expect things to be handed to them, and it's no, the world is a hard place. You got to go out and you got to earn respect, pretty much what
100%.
you did, right? So
But you have to be willing to earn it. My first couple of years in Ticats, I wasn't leaving until there was probably nobody else in the building. Because it was you felt like you being there was the most critical thing. Someone's going to walk by my office and I'm going to be doing work. And I'm going to prove to them that I'm willing to earn this job. Or earn the respect and earn players' respect. And my biggest thing was every time there's a new coach and they went and asked players, the players always said, yeah, she's there for us when we need her. She gives sound advice. She's willing to figure out answers if she wasn't there. So I always had the people that you want to impress are the athletes. Yes, the GM and management, but those people aren't in the locker room or aren't in the training room.
at the end of the day, what the athletes say speaks the most volume,
100%.
right?
What the starting quarterback, or it doesn't even have to be a starting player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A backup is one play away from being a starter. So you kind of realize that it's not just about the status of that player, that you have to treat them like equals and stuff like that. So I just think I always tried to make sure the people that I was, one-on-one working with recognized that I was putting my all into it and that I genuinely was wanting them to get better or be their best self or whatever. And I think as long as I still have that, I think I can do this job. As soon as you start to lose that desire to help people, truly, I think that's when should maybe start looking for a different job.
Yeah, reevaluate myself a little.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know, building on that, I have nothing to add to that, honestly. What I want to actually ask you is, what is the craziest, athletic therapy experience you've had? What's, the craziest injury you've seen, or, I don't know, you probably get this question a lot.
Yeah.
But,
What's funny is that in 2010, I think it was, I did an internship. Actually, I had done the Ticats internship, and, I could have just said, okay, I've had my experience for the year, but I was still in school, and I was supposed to work at Guelph that year, but I had kind of suspended that opportunity to work Ticats. But then afterwards, there was still an opening with Guelph Wrestling, and that was my first experience with wrestling. And it was like 3 days after the CFL season. I was like, yep, I'm in it. I'm ready to go. So I would drive from Brampton to Guelph every day. And I think that was pretty eye-opening, like just introduction working with wrestling and being like, wow, this is strange. Like, this is a whole different culture.
You worked with Corey, right?
I worked with Corey.
Corey, the first guest of Battling Basics. Shout out to Corey
guest.
Jarvis.
Yes, that was when I met Corey. But in that year, it was wild. Like, the injuries that I saw were so different from football. And
you probably like never seen it like anything like wrestling before,
and
right?
When I went to MAC, I was friends with wrestlers, and I had kind of seen wrestling tournaments, but in a different light, where I wasn't the one rushing onto the mat if someone was hurt or whatever. So that was kind of a different experience. And our student therapists that work with wrestling have their first tournament. They're going with the girls to Concordia this weekend. I said, you're never going to be prepared for those first kind of matches you see, because you're going to be like so on edge, wondering what the hell is going to happen, and you have no idea. But that year I remember seeing, you know, wild skin things that you don't see in football. But I also remember seeing all these dislocated elbows. Doesn't happen in football. So then fast forward 8 years of working in pro football, hadn't seen a dislocated elbow one time. Nothing,
Really?
Rarely even elbow injuries. And then it was...
I would imagine in football you'd see everything.
I mean, you do, but whatever, maybe a strained UCL or something like that. Anyways, the game, I can't even remember who we were playing, probably Edmonton, because everything bad seems to happen when we were playing Edmonton. But one of our players went down, screaming bloody murder, and I go onto the field, elbow dislocation. Thankfully, you know, in a football game, you have doctors and surgeons and stuff there. So, I mean, my part was relatively small, just calming him down and kind of transitioning to where the doctors are. So we go on. He goes into the locker room with the doctors and gets sorted out and stuff. And we're on the field again. One of our best players goes down. I walk onto the field, and he's very calm. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, maybe he got like a Charlie horse or something like relatively minor. He's pretty calm. He goes, I just dislocated my elbow. And it went back in. I was like, what? I go 8 years without seeing a dislocated elbow, and now I have 2 in the same game. That game was one of the craziest days because 14 people didn't finish the game, which in football, it sounds, okay, not a big deal, but you know, maybe other games 3 or 4 aren't able to finish the game, but 14 people didn't finish that game. We had
14 is like a third of the team.
Yeah, a 52-man or 46-man roster. So 44 dress, yeah, it's a good chunk of the team. So that was probably one of the craziest games in terms, like, I remember sitting at my desk till probably 2 or 3 in the morning, just like, holy crap. Like, that's a lot of people that are sad tonight or hurt tonight. And you kind of absorb that sadness and that negative energy, right? And I can remember it like it was yesterday, just sitting at my desk, being like, wow. I think there was like 2 ACLs that day, 2 dislocated elbows, concussion. So, but, yeah. So although those are not the wildest injuries, I can remember that day because so many people were hurt, and just like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to, you know, if someone gets hurt, you have to tell the coach, you have to make sure that the replacement is on the field. Like, you have so many responsibilities when someone gets hurt that it's exhausting at the end of the day. But I can still remember my first game and standing on the sideline and being like, holy shit, this is, on field side, this sounds like mini car crashes are happening every single tackle. And how the hell am I going to get through this game?
Mini car crashes?
Without someone dying at my hands. But, you know,
yeah,
you get through it. And I was so lucky to have, you know, Dr. Levy and other people by my side to make sure it went smoothly. So
yeah,
it's a pretty wild experience. And
I can only imagine, like, how many people got injured?
In that game, it was like 14 didn't finish the game.
So, like, how many variables did you have to, like, juggle in just one game? Like, I can't...
a lot. It was wild.
That's, yeah. Okay, talk to me then about, like, when a player gets injured, like, it's an important game. Mm-hmm. You have to go on the field. Mm-hmm. There's a big audience. You're on national TV. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the pressures of having to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they call medical staff support staff for a reason. We are by no means in the starlight. Even just doing little podcasts like this, it's like, oh God, no, I need to be in the background. So you don't recognize that you're on television. So there might be 30,000 people in the audience, but it's not even that. It's like the people that are watching on TV and stuff like that. And sometimes there's cameras like right in your face. But if you're really focusing on your job, it's dealing with the person right there. So I don't pay attention at all to what is on the camera. It's just helping that athlete get through that moment. So we'd run onto the field, typically me and another athletic therapist, and discern what happened and if it was safe for them to move, right? So that's your first decision. Is it safe for them to get off the field, or do we need to do more evaluation on the field?
Yeah.
And it's not safe for them to walk off or whatever.
Yeah.
Particularly with concussion and spinals and things like that are so possible in football.
Yeah.
So once you realize that it's safe for them to move, you go off the field. In football, there's a 3-play. If you had to get medical attention on the field, you have to go off for 3 plays. So even though it was something minor and they're fine, they have to be off for 3 plays. In that 3 plays, often I would take them to our doctor who would be on the sideline, do an assessment, make sure it wasn't anything serious. If it wasn't, they would go back. Potentially they would have an injury that was, not super serious, so we'd tape them up or put them in a brace or kind of offer some support to them, and then they'd go back. Or there's the athletes who can't continue, in which, you console them and deal with it after the game, ice, brace, crutches, whatever have you. So depends on the severity, but I think, again, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you're there to help athletes.
Yeah.
So
like you're just so in the zone. That,
yeah. And then you awkwardly see your picture, like of you laying on the ground helping the quarterback who was just injured, or you see yourself on TV and you're like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. You're just like, oh, that's so awkward.
But yeah, I think I'm someone who doesn't love kind of the attention, and that's why they're the athletes and we're the people who help them. And you just kind of focus on the athlete, and that calms your nerves, because I know that that's what I can do, and that's what I'm good at. I can.
You're not worried about what audience number 34 thinks.
No, exactly. So yeah, and it's sport. Just like fans criticize athletes, there's going to be fans that are criticizing the training staff, and they're losing with shitty medical staff, or that they have so many injuries, it must be the medical staffs. And you kind of just get angry at times, because you're like, there's
so many things out of your control, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's the nature of sport, right? So
haters gonna hate.
Haters gonna hate, right? Exactly.
So when a player does get injured and you kind of assess them, and then let's say they get an MRI or whatnot, and you get the results, a lot of the time you're probably gonna have to be the bearer of bad news, right? Talk to me about how you kind of have to deliver that kind of information to people on a regular basis, and it's people you usually care about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I remember doing an interview years ago, and it's not that I do interviews very often, but I remember this very specifically, and the guy was like, what do you think that is your major strength? And I said, trying to be empathetic, I guess, is what I would hope to be. But yeah, you are often the bearer of not ideal news. So I think as a former athlete, all I would wish for is that someone be real with me and educate me on what's the steps to come. So if someone has an MRI, I'm making sure I bring out my iPad and I show them kind of the anatomical structures that they may have heard, and kind of brief them on what's to come. So let's say someone's torn their ACL. We know the process. You're going to continue to rehab until you meet the surgeon. Once you see the surgeon, they'll provide you the surgery date. You'll have surgery, and then the crappy rehab starts. But
yeah,
I think when I've spoken to athletes, what they've been so appreciative of just being honest and open right from the get-go and saying, okay, yeah, this sucks. And do I wish this happened to you? No, absolutely not. However, I will be here every step of the way and tell you the normals and the not normals, and always give you the step ahead. So okay, next week we'll focus on this. And I think if you can remind athletes to be in the moment and to focus on the current steps, and not being so in 8 months when I'm back, what's it going to be like? if they can focus on the current, it's often you're able to maintain your sanity.
The outcome will take care of itself
right.
later. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've, one of the girls on the volleyball team here had to have shoulder surgery, and she's like, God, the rehab is 6 or 7 months. It's so freaking long. And now she's back practicing and playing, and I was like, look, did that 6 months really feel that long? She's like, no, it kind of just felt like the off season. I said, I know, and you didn't lose a step, because rehab, it doesn't mean you can't do anything. It's, you're going to protect your injury, but then, especially here, we have an amazing strength and conditioning staff who's going to tailor programs to you on a weekly, daily, or, monthly basis. That's going to be, if you can't use your right ankle, well, you can use the opposite side, you can do core, upper body, all those things. So we're working at the whole body, and then once that limb or joint or area is better, then the rest of your body's already going to be fit, and it's going to join the party, right? So if you do this rehab properly, you're treating the whole body. You're not just treating the knee or the ankle or whatever. You're treating the psyche, you're treating the whole body, and when that ankle is ready, the rest of the body's already going to be ready.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's where rehab really,
that's a good way of looking at it.
Like a well thought out rehab program is going to address the entire person.
Yeah.
Right? And not just
and
that.
this muscle right here gets stronger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because rehab is very psychological.
And no, and like going back to what you said too, it's like the good thing about athletic therapy is you get to go on the court and do certain things like playing pepper or whatnot. So like it's not just you're laying in a bed for 6 months getting massage or whatnot. It's actually like you have an active role in helping the athletes on site. So no, that's awesome. I want to ask you, for any kin or sports medicine student looking to get into the field of athletic therapy, do you have any advice for like a 21-year-old like?
Yeah, I think this thing is the most important thing. This topic is the most important, because I think I see students, and here we're really lucky. At Mac, we have like a student field therapist program. We get tons of applicants from kin, life science, health sci, whatever. And they interview, and then we select 65, and then we do training, and then we place them with teams, and they work with our teams all year round. For the most part, those students are kind of the cream of the crop, because they recognize that either it's because they want to go to med school, so they need that volunteer experience. I don't really care why someone wants to do it, if they're willing to put in the effort, whether it's because they want to know what they want to do, they want to go to med school, they need to gain experience. But I think the most successful students that I've ever worked with are the ones that are in the moment. Like, okay.
They don't know what they want to do yet.
Right. And even if, my med school application says I need to have all this volunteer work, well, awesome. Don't just do it to do it. If you're going to be here, make it count. So all of my students, I'm like, I'd rather you not be here if you're just going to sit on a chair and not, integrate yourself into the environment. With everything, find a purpose. So if I'm doing massage, why are you doing the massage? If you're taping, why are you doing the tape job?
Yeah.
Don't just let it pass you by. So like be in the moment and really involve yourself. So my biggest piece of advice is find experiences, whether that's volunteering in a clinic, whether that's shadowing someone like we talked about.
It's pretty much what you said earlier, right?
Yeah, you need to see what you want to do. And I wouldn't ever, I want to be a doctor without having shadowed a doctor. You need to be realistic about what that actual job is, and not just, I think this is what an athletic therapist does, or I think this is what a surgeon does, or I think this is what a teacher does. If you're going to be disappointed if you go through school, collect all that debt, and then show up on day one, you're like, oh crap, I don't like this. I'm not good. I'm not good at this. I don't like this, or whatever it is, right? So I think take the volunteer experience. Take every opportunity. I remember, there's a gymnastics competition this weekend. Well, I don't know if I like gymnastics, watching it. I don't know if I like training it. And it was a great experience, right? It doesn't have to be the obvious choice. Like, take chances and go work different experiences. And again, if you don't like something, it's equally as valuable. You can cross that off your list. I definitely don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to be a teacher. I definitely don't want to be an athletic therapist. That shit is way too hard. There's way too many hours. This is not glamorous. Cross it off your list.
Yeah.
But I think having those experiences that confirm or deny your desire to do that are equally as valuable, right? So I think for sure getting involved in the profession prior to doing school can often shine a big light on if you'd like it, and be willing to kind of get experience through volunteer. Like, yeah, there's some paid jobs here. If you're working a basketball tournament that's not through MAC, sure, you might get the $10 an hour or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's not
whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that sense of entitlement really freaks me out because I don't know how to counteract it. I don't know what I can do if I have a student that comes in to volunteer and they really don't want to get their hands dirty, then I would just rather them not be there. I love when students just come open-minded and just be like, okay, tell me what you want me to do. Fold towels? You want me to clean you want me to take out the garbage? Like, we all have to start somewhere. And the reality is, if you ever own a clinic, you're going to be the one wiping those tables down at the end of the day, doing the crappy jobs. So I think if you wanted to go into a particular field, be realistic about what the expectations are.
Yeah.
There's going to be highlights, don't get me wrong. Like, my career has tons of awesome things that I think people would pay to experience. But for every awesome experience, there's a handful of really crappy ones where I was, knee deep in hot tub flooding water trying to fix a hot tub. I don't know what the hell that has to do with anything, but right, if you own a clinic or manage a facility, I got to help design a beautiful athletic therapy room with cold tubs and saunas and hot tubs and stuff because I was in that role. I help design a massive gym, but again, if you don't put yourself in those opportunities.
Yeah.
When I was volunteering with Chris, he was like, hey, can you do all this filing and this paperwork for me? So when I was filing, I'd look at the pages and okay, this is budgeting, this is ordering, this is...
So you learned on the job.
You learn through people asking you to do little tasks. And I'm so proud of some of the students that I have here. And I'm sure I have a very awesome relationship with a lot of our students.
Yeah, you run a tight ship around. She runs a tight ship at Mac, guys, just letting you know.
But I want them to be realistic. I said, don't leave your crap everywhere. Clean up after yourself. Restock the shelves. The other day I came in, there's, no tape on the tape tables. The stools were untucked. I took pictures of the room, and we have a group, kind of email thread for all of our student therapists. I said, guys, I know, A, you're busy, B, it's exams, but come on, recognize that if someone has practice Monday morning and you were here Saturday night and you left it like this, it's probably not too awesome for your coworkers. But if hopefully at the end of the day they go and work somewhere else and it's an evaluation is well, hey, that girl is really well organized. She really respects her workspace. She's always, looking for tasks to do. I would way rather push out people like that with that type of work ethic than that girl just sat on her butt and watched me do treatments and thought she would learn that way. So yeah, I do run a tight ship and they know that, and I think that's sometimes why people like working, because they know it's going to be the reality after school.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and I really do like what you said about having to just get in there and get your hands dirty, because you don't know until you actually try it. I actually read a psych book recently, and the guy was talking about trying different things, and he said the cleaner you are, the dirtier you get. So it's just if you're just not willing to do anything, eventually you're going to get really dirty because you're just so clean your whole life, and it just kind of hits you that you haven't really done anything. You know what I mean? So it's just... Yeah, you gotta try things. I actually wanted to be a physio for a long time, and I volunteered at a physio clinic, and nothing against physio. I just realized, it wasn't for me.
And it's nothing against anyone. Everybody has the things that they're great at, and even if that's what you want, you could go and you're like, man, I don't like touching people, or I don't like absorbing someone else's sadness or negative energy. That's totally fair.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think, again, I'm thankful that I was able to find kind of what I liked doing early on and was able to dive into it full-heartedly, because I so see so many of people your age are like, oh crap, I don't know what to do now. And that's so stressful. I'm not sure I would have dealt with that well. I think I was supposed to know what I was doing, because I don't know where else I would have gone.
Honestly, I think the key is just putting it in perspective. Like, you can literally do anything you want.
Totally. And it doesn't have to be a job that already exists. You can make something up that kind of combines all your passions and, your love of wrestling, your work ethic. And I think that's another really good thing that I learned is
Starting a podcast.
Starting a podcast. All these athletes, you guys, sometimes you don't have time for a job. You don't have time to build your resume. You don't have time to do this. But when I'm talking to you athletes and you're like, okay, but if you break down your skills as an athlete, it's totally relevant to the work world.
Yeah.
I commit to this. I have work ethic. I can study and I can learn on the spot. I can learn playbooks. I can do this. You know what I mean? And it's seeing that athletes are such valuable members of community.
Well, athletes are dirty. Athletes are they've been in like.
And they're willing to work.
Exactly, but like if you like say going back to when you were talking about those med school applicants that just want to put stuff on their resume, a lot of those guys are like, not to hate, like, but a lot of those guys are actually clean. Guys and girls are all clean because they just did it for the sake of doing it, not actually getting in and getting dirty. But athletes, like, it's hard to pursue an athletic a sport without getting your hands dirty. It's very hard.
And I think the real athletes who time management is so critical, right? And that's what people are saying, oh, well, it was so challenging. Well, I felt like as a student therapist going through my undergrad, it was similar to an athlete, right? You're there pre-practice and post-practice. So technically your time is even longer.
They're there for all the practices and before and after. Yeah.
So it's longer, but that allowed me to plan my time. I didn't have a time for a nap or whatever. I did my homework in my little bit of free time. So it forced me to be organized and it forced me to get my crap done. And sometimes people who have too much free time aren't as efficient because, I'll do that later after I do that. Well, I didn't have a later, right? Like, I knew that this hour and a half of my schedule was the one and only time I could do homework, so I did that.
Gotta do it now.
But that's athletes. Most often, there's tons of variety there and variables, but if they are determined, they'll recognize, okay, this is my day. I need to get the stuff done when I have the openings. And
I completely agree. I find my grades drop when I actually get injured and I have more time on my hands.
Totally. My marks got better the busier I was because I was like locked in and like that was
the zone, right?
Yeah, that was the path that you had to take.
Yeah.
So not that grades are everything, but focus and a path is very important. It's not necessarily grades driven. It's kind of figuring yourself out too.
No, for sure. Just one quick thing. Connor, what time are we at right now?
58 minutes.
58? Okay. Before we go, I want to ask you one question. So over your years as an athletic therapist, seeing all these injuries, what is the number one reason you find that causes people to get injured? And what do you think people can do to prevent that?
As weird as it might sound, I think now, and Ben and Chris and I, so strength coaches and athletic therapists, we've talked that athletes are more prone to overtraining now, right? Gone are the days of off seasons. Gone are the days of people being like, yeah, I'm willing to take a rest day, right? People are like, no, I need to work harder. Like, and I'm talking kind of top tier athletes are like, I need to work harder to beat my opponent, or I need to do this workout to make sure that I'm better off than the person I'm competing with.
You gotta get that competitive edge,
right?
Yeah.
But then we're seeing neurologically and psychologically and physically that people are getting burnt out, right? And then they go to the match and they don't have enough in the tank, right? I'm sure you can see when you're overtrained that you might not be able to execute on tournament day as good. Whereas when you have this nice periodized program and you've really kind of ramped up and then tailored down and then execute, you feel different. But I think it's like a weird balance between overtraining and undertraining. So the people that get hurt most are either the ones who didn't prepare enough, so they had that off season and they didn't take advantage of their
They're
opportunity.
like out of shape, or
Out of shape, or did the wrong things, or whatever. And then there's the people who are overtrained. They're just exhausted and they're breaking down and their muscles are tired, so they're not firing optimally. So you go and do a move that you've done before, you go and do a jump or a block that you've done before, and your legs just collapse underneath you.
yeah.
And I mean, I'll tell you all the normal things that you'd expect from your classes. Sleep, hydration, nutrition are so critical, right? For those people who think those elements don't contribute, if you're not resting, if you're not hydrating as much as you can and eating the right things, doesn't matter what you're doing, right? That's going to prepare your body. But I really do think right now, in the athletes that we see and pro stuff, it's overtraining. It's like people just want to be better. And good for you. I would rather work with an athlete that's like too driven and need to be educated and say, hey, take a rest day, or take a day to do hot yoga, or take a day to do a stretch and a foam roll, and see how you feel after that, right? So it's good that people are eager and keen and want to be great. And sometimes
It's a good problem to have, I guess.
It is a good problem to have, but and it goes back to the basics. Education and communication is so critical. So as an athlete, keeping a journal or a log on how you're feeling every day, or really being mindful of when you need to be at your best, when do you need to peak, and kind of building backwards from there, I think is become a really common trend now, is building backwards from your peak days. And
So like set the goal and then just work backwards to
right.
now.
Yeah, and I think that if you can have more of a holistic approach where your nutrition, your rest, your preparation, your strength and conditioning, and your coaching and your physical are all kind of similar goals and similar
Integrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't do it just focusing on one element, right? We feel like the athletes who focus on themselves as a whole, right, potentially can be injury-free longer, but in sport, let's get serious. Like, if you do a sport long enough, you're going to get hurt. But it's how you respond to that injury and not let it defeat you. And when you're hurt, things like sleep and nutrition and rest, and they become so much even more critical when your body's not at its best. So I think it's just how you respond to injury, if you let it defeat you versus, recognizing that it's an opportunity to improve yourself from the ground up and rebuild some things that can be really positive. And in all seriousness, like, a lot of athletes come back better after injury.
Yeah.
When they are given this time away from their sport that they can kind of rebuild themselves. And but I do think it's a scary world of overtraining now.
I would have never guessed that. That's insane.
Really? When do you take off days?
I thought I only take it once a week,
But even, right, the varsity season runs from September, and I mean, you're in a unique situation because wrestling, it's not just your varsity schedule. You're focused on Commonwealth Games coming up. You're focused on different trials, different preparations for whatever the next goal is. But every sport, volleyball runs from September to April. Well, May 15th, they're back practicing 3 days a week or whatever have you.
Yeah.
So athletes are now staying here in the off season more, which is amazing because then they get treatment, they get to work with our strength coaches, they get to work with coaches, whatever. It's all awesome and positive as long as we can control the volume.
Yeah.
Right? We still need somewhat of an off season.
So like working hard is obviously ideal, but at the same time you have to be smart.
100%.
It sucks when you just work so hard and then you end up getting injured because you're just like you get all confused. You're like, oh, I worked so hard, like why did this happen? But it's just like you can't let your ego get in the way. I think ego is a big thing. Like if I just we think we're like invincible, we can grind it out and just like pound our body 365 constantly and expect our body to be healthy. It's like no, like injuries are inevitable, but you gotta also be smart. Take that one day off a week, do your prehab, whatever, do all that preventative stuff, and I guess that's what it comes down to.
And recognizing if you don't feel something, to communicate it. Like if you're like, something in my low back is sore, I think when people sustain really major injuries, they could look back and be like, oh yeah, that was bothering me before, and I didn't say anything. So it's not that we want people to be so hyper vigilant and annoying and overthinking everything, but we're also here to do some preventative care and here to educate about rolling and stretching and strengthening and whatever have you. So if you're not feeling awesome, it's probably for a reason, and you're okay to bring it forward and say, hey, how can I address this problem before it becomes an issue or before it leads to something more significant. But
Yeah.
I think the better an athlete knows their body, the better they can push at the times of need and pull back in the times of need too. You know that if you wake up feeling shitty, maybe you need to either push yourself hard that day if you know you have the energy, or you need to pull back and say, okay, this is a day that I shouldn't be doing that.
It's a balance.
Yeah, it's all about balance.
But fair enough. Well, unfortunately, Carly, I think we're out of time for today. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Everyone, Carly Vandergrient. Tune in next week for Battling Basic 3. Until next time.
Thank you.